This is a lecture from the book The Secret School of Wisdom for the Docecist degree, which was the second highest level of the Illuminati, written by Adam Weishaupt, Josef Wages, ppr 337, 353. It is difficult to discuss matters for which our languages do not yet have words, when our entire language is constructed to express their exact opposite, when our sensory impressions have continuously reaffirmed this opposite since childhood and our abstract ideas, understanding, logic, and reasoning are based thereon, when our entire system of thought and even our inner awareness are shaken to the core, and all our sensations, thoughts, and our most basic principles are suddenly shown to be dubious illusions, when it seems sheer madness to assert the contrary against the entire world, as well as one's own inward and outward sentiments. Yet, despite all this, we shall dare to propound our thoughts, presenting concepts with the tongues of mortals that we can barely discern from afar, even with our highest intellectual faculties, let alone fully and clearly develop in our current form. We shall see who is strong enough to find his way out of this general illusion, to break free for a moment from the bonds of the senses and body, transfigure himself, and imagine himself in a different world. No man's ideas are innate. We receive all our concepts only through our senses, and in proportion to whether these are better or worse, or whether we receive more or fewer of them. At first, they are mere sensations. Generalized and abstract ideas develop only from repeated sensations. They are nothing other than sensations of resemblances, and consequently they cannot be conceived at all without using the senses beforehand. All our reason and understanding is built on this sole foundation. Or could a man born blind and deaf possess reason and understanding? Our current ideas of the world and its parts are guided only by these senses, and with different senses, all our ideas and sensations would change. If the construction of our eyes were microscopic, we would see a new, entirely different world, and we would have a different language and philosophy. Thus, if we possess not a single innate concept, if all our ideas are derived from our senses, and if these senses can be heightened or lowered, decreased or increased, if experience furthermore demonstrates that with every change or modification of the senses, the world in all its parts changes its appearance, and that with different senses we thus would have very different ideas about the world and its parts, since with these altered sensations our abstract concepts and everything that is based on them must inevitably be different. Once the foundation has changed, then we have every reason to assert with the greatest confidence that this earth, as well as all other parts of the universe, are not in and of themselves what they appear to be to us, but that on the whole this shaky supposition is the foundation of all our knowledge, and that all our concepts and abstractions based thereon do not lead to the inside of the matter itself, that for this very reason most questions in this regard cannot be resolved, that there are as many and diverging schools of philosophy as there are differently organized beings confronting reality, and that the five senses known to us are wrongly taken to be the only and final means by which the world can be conceived. If these presuppositions are correct, then everyone must also be willing to accept the following conclusions as true and undisputed, even if one's own entire inner sensibility should revolt against it, because they are simply immediate conclusions and results of the foregoing, and this inward feeling of revulsion proves only that this prior way of thinking is too closely linked to our nature, most intimately, so to speak, for one to believe that this present discourse might find many admirers and followers. Indeed, it would be ridiculous if people wished to act and speak accordingly, considering that even the most zealous followers deem this unnecessary, and such doctrines are meant only for those who dedicate themselves to the highest contemplations on nature and its essence, who seek to reach the very boundaries of human understanding. It is merely intended to humble the pride and insolence of man and to return him to what is not far to seek and essential for his felicity, to expel the spirit of speculation and spur men on to action, to show them what they do not know and shall never discover, to expose the inconsistencies of previous systems, to keep people from straying onto erroneous paths, and to expose materialism and its supposed power. It is meant to devise new reasons for the so strongly disputed and otherwise nearly unprovable continued existence of our self, thus presenting a consoling yet widely ridiculed doctrine from a new perspective, giving new luster to old and tarnished matters, demonstrating the glory of God and his works in a new, unexpected, and irrefutable manner, and to prove that man in his arrogance, so proud of his reason, has no cause to spurn the things he does not fathom, that impossibilities may be possible after all. Thus, if the above principles are correct, it inevitably follows: 1. That it is impossible for us to penetrate into the inner nature of beings and to uncover the creation of the world and its main components. 2. That in essence any sensation in a being, whether it is organized the same or differently, is nothing other than the effect of external objects on beings organized in this and in no other manner. 3. That any change to this organization, no matter how inconspicuous, must inevitably incur a true change, proportionate to its cause in the perception of the being which perceives and senses. 4. That by virtue of his natural or artificial senses, whether they are enhanced or diminished, every man is always right. The difference in his sensation is not deceitful, even if it is very great, and his sensation differs from that of all others, because he sees things as his organization allows, and it is no different for anyone else. 5. That we only accuse others of flawed and erroneous sensations because their mode of sensing and seeing is not like ours, not the prevailing one, as is their organization. 6. That while there are other beings and forces outside us, they are essentially unknown to us and appear to us only through their effects, revealing themselves in different ways, depending on the individual subject's receptivity. That consequently, these objects outside us are merely our own thoughts, and that in this respect, this system is completely different from the idealism of ancient and modern thinkers. 7. That body, matter, and extension, when viewed as such, are mere appearances, phenomena, beneath which the unknown forces become tangible for us. That following these principles, one can examine the truth of a doctrine which regards matter as dead and shapeless, as the origin of evil, and the body as the prison of the soul, which has been placed into this predicament by the Creator of all matter. 8. That imaginary causes also produce imaginary effects, just as the universally accepted illusion and nullity of color does not prevent entire arts, crafts, and sciences, such as fabric dyeing, chemistry, and painting, from being occupied with creating colors and properly arranging and using them. 9. That even our bodies, as well as our organization, as such are also only mere appearances, that these words and figures of speech, in and of themselves, have no meaning other than the receptivity of our imagination, equally unknown to us, our ability to imagine the effects of these unknown forces upon us in this and in no other manner. 10. That perhaps we visualize a vast multitude of these forces affecting us, entangled herewith as a single sensory image. 11. That the selfsame object, when affecting 1,000 different organizations, would appear to others in 1,000 different forms, although it would appear to me solely in one form, that furthermore it would appear to beings of a different nature and with other senses as something for which we presently do not even have a concept, that a tree is not a tree to all beings, that therefore every object has the potential to appear in 1,000 different ways, just as our faces in a convex plane or concave mirror will appear either normal or elongated, wide, enlarged, or small. Figuratively speaking, these different organizations are the plane, concave, and convex mirrors. 12. That although it is basically only appearance, that which generally and consistently appears in some way to all or most men is as much as real to us. That this diversity of organizations known to us, however, serves to discover the ontological truth. That is a truth that is confirmed not by one, but several organizations known to us. 13. That all our knowledge and language are therefore based on the supposition that the world in all its parts really is, in itself, what it appears to us, regardless of linguistic usage. That all our philosophy is a philosophy of appearances. That this doctrine is necessarily prone to the most terrible and ridiculous misunderstandings, as long as our language is not equipped for it. 14. That there is, therefore, a peculiar kind of physics, philosophy, ethics, and legislation for all beings of a different organization or receptivity, and perhaps for certain beings none of all that, and instead some other sciences unknown to us suited to these new-found organizations, unless the sciences are designed for men alone and not at all for such organizations. 15. That every organization has its own truth, valid alone to its own kind, which, however, is not false, only because it cannot be confirmed in other organizations. That all our common truth is based only on premises abstracted from our senses and is true only to this extent. However, if the organization changes, then the experiences and premises also change, and then, no more of all that, a different world, different objects, a different system, and a different truth, unfathomable, unthinkable for us in this form. Impossibilities, perhaps, becoming possible. Perhaps nothing at all of that we know, what we presently are. Currently unable to experience this, a lack of words and language, or of what use are words where there are no concepts, where they can only express what we presently are and experience, and therefore cannot be applied to something we would experience in a different form. If one does not tell a blind man that there is a sun, he will have no concept of it. However, once his eyes have been opened, he will indeed be stunned by a new and marvelous tableau. Is it not possible that we are afflicted with a similar blindness of which we are not aware because we lack other perspectives, but which may not have escaped the attention of other beings? Will death eventually brush the scales from our eyes, revealing to us a new yet unknown world? Could what we experience in our current form as the body's decomposition be that vision itself? Could what looks like a pallid, dead body to us be a higher form of life imperceptible to us? 16. Thus the curtain is drawn back with every new organ, the hitherto impenetrable veil lifted, thereby revealing a new world, so to speak, thousands upon thousands of worlds for thousands upon thousands of different observers in a single world, just one, and yet also thousands upon thousands. And in every one of these thousands upon thousands of worlds, each of which is nearly infinite, a new, most perfect, greatest order and harmony, God in his new magnificence, nature in her new splendor, the most remarkable diversity in the most fearsome unity. Thus, 17. In themselves, no sun, moon, earth, men, animals, fire, air, or water, only to us, all of this, and to us only for as long as we are thus organized. All mathematical truths, too, are valid and permanent only to the extent that dimensions and volume are appearances. 18. Even all previously insurmountable difficulties arising from time and space, the division of matter, cohesion of bodies, motion and rest, empty and full space, the infinity of space, simple and complex matters are disputes over appearances. In and of itself, nothing is simple, nothing is complex. It is only in this form, and according to our logic based thereon, that there is no intermediate in this respect. 19. It is the same with the dispute over eternity and origin of the world, as well as its infinite expanse or limits. This world as such is appearance, and therefore it has begun in this form with this our organization, with this receptivity of certain beings. But these forces have existed for an infinite period of time before manifesting themselves as the phenomenon world. For a sun to be seen there first had to exist beings with eyes, and a being equipped with something more than eyes sees what we call sun as something we cannot name, because we lack the senses to sense it as such. In short, this form of the earth and the universe has come into existence with our current receptivity. 20. Perhaps in this respect, revelation may be anticipated, advanced understanding of certain truths that are comprehensible or conceivable only in a different form, just as the news of the sun's reality is a revelation to someone born blind. Causing people to become skeptical of their present understanding, stirring their spirit of research to compare and reconcile what has been revealed with what is actually known. To accept the futility of reconciliation and to make them surmise, for that very reason, truths of a higher order, to establish a nexus between this new and future world and the present one, commencing here below. Perhaps also new and unique revelations for a future organization. 21. What a comforting prospect for the continuity of the self. Dying means ceasing to see and know men, animals, trees. But here, dying does not mean completely ceasing to exist, being without representation. Rather, it means obtaining a different organization and changing one's receptivity, seeing and recognizing the same things in a different way, shedding one's old snakeskin. It means peeling the mask off that which is outside us, penetrating further into the core of all forces, albeit still in a very imperfect manner. Dying means to be born, and being born means to die, to cease existence in one form, so that one may act and appear in another. After death, man will certainly cease to think, because thought is only for the phenomenon of man, and yet he will not entirely cease to exist. The spirit, the self, will obtain a newer, higher modification, as closely linked to this new state as thought was to his former organization. This modification will not be thought, but lacking the necessary experiences and words, we have no other expression. Thus we shall cease to imagine the world in this manner, but we shall not cease to be active in another, entirely different manner. Death is the transition from one way of seeing things to another, the gradual progression towards an understanding of the inner essence. This death awaiting us may not be the only one. 22. Likewise with our departed friends, their self, which was so dear to us, is not lost to us, just as we are not lost to them now. Their self shall be forever part of the universe around us, and it does affect us, although not in a way we can perceive with these our senses. Although we do not appear to them in this manner, in this form, we do appear to them in one peculiar to their own current organization. They do not remember us because memory is for man alone. But even though we know neither how, nor what the actus is by which the dead imagine those organized beings that are called men in this shell, we are nonetheless constantly an object of their imagination. 1,000 differently organized beings will know me, appearing to everyone around me here in this form and no other, by 1,000 different forms and shapes. Why should it be different where the dead are concerned? 23. When one day the world's new form, that new, undiscovered, hitherto only dreamt of country, is revealed to us after that grand metamorphosis all things must undergo, and the present world ceases to be, we also shall obtain the organization peculiar to this new world form, of our friends who went before us. Why then should we not find them once again, since we ourselves have not been lost to them during this interim period? 24. If what we have learnt about beings other than us and the phenomena earth and world, while in our current form, is already so excellent, orderly and harmonious, in spite of deception and appearance, orderly and harmonious even in its most fearsome manifoldness, should we not have cause for looking forward to death, this new, probably far more perfect insight into the inside of a much better world? Does death itself not become an initiation into a new life here, a triumph of nature? How grand must this tableau be if it is nearly impossible for spirits already accustomed to so much perfection, order, and beauty in these nether regions to conceive of something even more magnificent? And how infinitely grand must he be who has predestined such bliss for his creatures? Should one not think that Providence has concealed man's future state from him, because the certainty that such magnificence awaits us would make this life unbearable and speed the coming of death, so that one may reach that blissful state so much sooner? And should not in this manner the comforting doctrine of the immortality of the self be proven in the mysteries more firmly with all rights and for experienced, tried, moral men? We should presume so. 25. If then, as has already been established, this single world encompasses 1,000 other worlds for thousands upon thousands of different observers, and if furthermore every being sees only the world that has been tailored to it alone, but the selfsame subject, by changing its organization, cannot become the observer of another world, ascend towards higher spheres, survive its current form, look from one world form into the other, become the witness of a nexus of several forms emerging from one another and being founded on one another, then what is the purpose of this fearsome hoard and wealth of worlds? To what end would this earth alone have so many continents, kingdoms, countries, cities, and villages if everyone were destined to never set foot outside his own native soil? If a village, city, kingdom, or continent were only known to its inhabitants and unknown to everyone else? What would humanity be, what would the earth be, if no one were able to travel to its various parts, to survey and compare them, to sense and enjoy this far greater, immeasurable pleasure arising from this? Otherwise the world would be an immense palace of 1,000 different, most splendid apartments, each occupied by only a single tenant, none of whom would know or even suspect the existence of other rooms or their inhabitants, much less the coherence of its parts, its artful decoration, symmetry, and ornament, for the duration of his entire stay. Who then would be privy to this greatest of all pleasures, the joy of understanding the connection of several parts? If partial insight already grants this much pleasure, then this order, this magnificent universe lacks the most essential. It lacks an observer, a being who sees the whole as connection, the greatest object of understanding without the subject to understand it, the greatest joy existing without being enjoyed, the greatest work of art without connoisseurs to admire it and to draw conclusions about the magnificence of its creator. The greatest painter has made the most artful painting for the eternally blind. The most beautiful, delicious fruits ripen for no palate to taste them. Wherefore the most beautiful garden, if it is enjoyed by no one, wherefore the most beautiful, comfortable house, if it stands empty, wherefore the grandest harmony unheard by any ear, wherefore these grand, magnificent properties for which we lack the senses. How are we served by this anticipation of even grander tableau and more magnificent worlds? It would mean awaking the thirst, leading us to the spring, and then not quenching the thirst. It would mean showing us the land of rest, 185 in the distance, and making it impossible for us to reach. It would mean having feet, but never walking, and having eyes, but seeing nothing. What good is the most fertile seed if no one may harvest its fruit? Order and perfection forever unrecognized by anyone may as well not even exist. And yet this order, this development, and connection continue throughout eternity. It would be mad to believe that millions of the most artful creations exist, that the greatest beings were set into motion only to reveal to us, transitory creatures, the smallest, most insignificant part for a mere day, like a dream. This would mean to move an ocean only to drown a gnat. It would mean to prescribe a fixed star its orbit for several thousand years, so that it may be a poor beacon to the nightly wanderer. Where does this leave the economy of nature, this law so plainly visible throughout all creation? Why should one reach such intellectual heights in this form, only to suddenly be nothing more than a body's shade, which in turn serves only to eventually shed light on another, equally temporary one? Why then this eternal, purposeful rising and falling, this budding and wilting of all beings? Should there be nothing that is eternal? I could become what I presently am, could imagine and expect more than I am, and then suddenly, not only a complete standstill would follow, but a most fearsome, eternal night should fall on me as a result of a most unnatural, fearsome leap. Light would turn to darkness, and the brightest noon to the eternal darkest midnight. We would have learnt only to forget. God and nature would have built like children, having constructed a house of cards, only to destroy this most magnificent edifice senselessly at their whim. Oh no, all this cannot be. Everything clearly calls out to us that our self continues, albeit in different forms, that thousands upon thousands of grand tableaux still await us, that we are indeed mortal insofar as we lose this form, these seeds and this manner of seeing the world associated therewith, but that nonetheless we do not cease to be entirely, that in a new form, with a new modification, we begin to see a new world that is connected to the old, because everything is connected, that there is a middle between being and not being, and that is being different, and this different state of being shall prove the mutability of our organization, and as a necessary consequence, the mutability of the world and its form. 26. Thus, these world forms, one encompassed in the other, these various organizations of ours, one developing from the other, this cycle of alternately living and dying must be intrinsically connected, because ultimately everything is connected, and indeed receive their value, their common purpose only when we have recognized this purpose, and we can oversee this chain of worlds. Even the great Pythagorean journey from one being or soul to another after death may be real after all. In this case, it would be possible and even necessary that at least after having shed this form, this nexus would become visible to us, that at least after each new world life has come to an end, the results of our experiences and observations will be overshadowed by the stronger impressions in the new life, that they are now merely dormant, but when the journey through a certain number of worlds is completed, all the resorts, far mainsprings, and containers of our collected world experiences will suddenly be released and present themselves to our rational selves. Therefore, this journey would not be from one star to another, from one known form and organization to another form equally known to us, for example, from animals to humans and vice versa. It would be even more general and remarkable. It would be a journey from one cosmos and universe to another, entirely different from the previous one, and from one organization to a completely different one, for which our mind has no concept yet, and for which our language has no expressions. 27. The very intensity of this new life's impressions would also explain why we no longer remember anything at all of our state prior to our present human life, although we would profit from it to the extent that, through the use of our reason thus obtained, Through the enhanced capacity to make analogical deductions, we could infer that prior state with the greatest confidence, even though its mode and exact nature are concealed from us due to the powerful effects of our current life, until they are awakened again in the future by whatever means this may occur. 28. Furthermore, if everything we sense and know does not lead into the inside of things, but is merely the result of the influence of things outside us upon us, beings organized in such a manner and no other, it inevitably follows that there is a twofold truth, one which shows the intrinsic side of things, the objective absolute of beings and forces outside us, and a second showing the effect of this inner objective upon us, beings organized thus upon our receptivity. And this latter truth is not absolute, but relative, as it varies according to its basis, and it is as diverse as the organization and susceptibility of all beings. Although originating therefrom, it does not lead to the inside of things, but merely determines how something appears and how it would appear under these circumstances with this receptivity. Being as real as actuality for us, it forms the foundation of all our arts and sciences, and for this reason they also are relative. They have to yield along with their basis a different organization and receptivity. And in this respect they are only as eternal, necessary, and immutable as their basis. For the deaf, there is neither harmony nor language. For the blind, there are neither colors nor paintings. If all men were born deaf and blind, what would our sciences, arts, and philosophy be like? Or our legislation? Every new additional sense is a revelation of nature, a means for new knowledge and experiences, a deeper insight into the inside of beings. But this knowledge cannot be the very inside of these beings because it appears differently through different senses, because it is not recognized by all organizations known to us, and because it is still uncertain what can be recognized by other organizations that are still unknown to us. If we accept the premise that space, matter, extension, and the body are something real, and that they exist in and of themselves, then a great many direct and indirect conclusions and entire systems and sciences follow from this premise as their basis, and must also be true and correct inasmuch as they are consequences of this premise, just as the rules of chess are the necessary results of the properties arbitrarily assigned to each chess piece. However, just as these rules have to change if the properties assigned to the various chess pieces are changed, so the truth of our sensory experiences, along with our conclusions drawn from them, must also change with our senses and premises. They may change in whatever way, and yet the resulting experiences are always true and self-evident, since it is the very purpose and destiny of these hidden forces to induce, through their influence on such an organization, these conclusions, inferences, and thoughts, just as their influence on another organization will lead to different results. They are all true as long as we infer no more than the nature of things and the laws of influence permit, and if we do not conclude that we perceive the same things under different conditions, that experiences made in this state can also be applied to other states, that a blind man can conceptualize a rose or color, or that beings without the sense of sight also have concepts for the beauty or ugliness of things. And thus, even though illness as such may be no more than appearance, I would have no less cause to seek help, because it incidentally contains a factual element which inevitably affects me in this manner under these conditions, but differently under others, perhaps even pleasantly. I still require the effect I find disagreeable to be relieved, for appearance to be relieved by appearance, whether the pain is illusory or real. As long as we are organized in this way, and our current nature is such that we seek out pleasant states and avoid and flee unpleasant ones, then its effects remain unpleasant. All relative truths are valid only to the extent that invisible forces outside us in this situation and in these certain conditions manifest themselves in this way in beings of this organization, while manifesting themselves differently in others. 29. However, if relative truth is determined by the diversity of organizations, it must also be guided by their number. Among these, there is one that is general, natural, and consistent for humanity. Our present logic accepts as true what we derive by it alone. It considers everything else as flawed, perhaps for the same reason that a man with a straight gait mocked in the land of the lame. It provides the foundation for the totality of our knowledge, as well as our concepts of ugliness and beauty, of virtue and vice. We even apply, without discrimination, the concepts derived from it to worlds that we believe to exist, whose nature is heterogeneous from ours. We assign them to differently constituted beings, and driven by the pride natural to us and the inability to think of anything better, we call a dearth of our own concepts imperfection. And if we want to distinguish beings of a higher order, we merely equip them with a higher degree of our own perfections, thereby succumbing to the most glaring inconsistencies in assigning will and intellect to beings we consider incorporeal. We believe that a tree must be a tree for everyone just because we ourselves perceive it as one, thus ascribing identical results to different causes. It is this truth that seduces us into holding that which we do not fully understand as impossible, and to think that a paradox here must also be paradoxical there, even though the underlying premises and everything else are different. It is the basis of everything we can know. From it, we derive our idea of space, structure, extension, shape, body, and matter. These collected ideas become the premises on which we base our conclusions, on which we establish and develop entire systems, sciences, and arts. Through them, we characterize things outside us by odor, taste, color, warmth, coldness, rest, and motion, and from them we derive our understanding of size, beauty, and ugliness. But if the supposition, our comprehensive capacity of sensation, our premises, experiences, and senses is changed, then everything ceases to be cold or warm, great or small, beautiful or ugly, true or false. For in addition to this general and consistent organization, there are also certain others, natural and artificial ones, like exceptions to the rule by which an object viewed by everyone else in one way can be seen from a different vantage point, thus prompting unusual sensations by which new and unique truths are discovered. 30. These new, scarcer, and unique organization are thus the source of a second, relative truth. It is not perceived by the general human organization, but is induced by microscopic vision, jaundice. Jaundice can lead to xanthopsia, a type of color blindness in which everything looks yellowish, and other similar conditions. The differently organized majority calls it a flaw, an infirmity, an illusion, an optical deception, a disease. To the majority, this condition is very much what that same majority's knowledge is to more highly organized beings, because to these beings, our general human modes of sensation are likewise faulty. However, this mode of seeing and knowing is in no way falsehood, error, or deception. It would be false if one were to see yellow with eyes of the same structure that others see red or green with, but seeing yellow with jaundiced eyes is natural, truthful, and perfect. Anyone who judges according to the true sensations of such a peculiar and rare organization is right, and speaks the truth because he judges as he senses, and our judgments also are generated by our sensations. If all men were organized like that, and if the structure of most eyes was microscopic, this mode of seeing would be general and true, and our current mode would then be unusual, and irregular. And although this individual would be just as correct and true in his perceptions and judgments according to his mode of vision, as are all others who see and judge according to their own particular modes, it would still be necessary for this so-called flaw in him to be corrected, not because it is a flaw as such, but because this flaw is not a general one, because others will think, judge, and act based on their own sensations, which are very different to his. And because this mode is necessary for our felicity, conceiving of things in the same way as men generally do. If these anomalies, these irregular modes of sensation did not exist, it would also be impossible for men to discover the higher ontological relative truth. They would not know that the same object must appear differently to different senses. They would think that their own sensation, their own mode of perception, leads to the inside of things, or may even be that inside itself, in which case it would be impossible even for the most skilled thinker to escape from this illusion. Yet the more such artificial or natural organizations there are that we are able to experience ourselves, or of which we at least hear, see, or read about in the accounts of those who actually experience them, the more means we obtain to escape from this misconception, to discover new qualities previously unknown to us, something that is universal and real, that brings us closer to the matter, to see our previously made experiences confirmed even in other forms, or to see them disappear, to experience ourselves whether or not something is more than mere appearance to these senses of ours, whether this beautiful face will retain its charm even under microscopic eyes. It is only through jaundice, the telescope, the microscope, every individual mode of perception, natural or artificial, that we are induced to make the great and important discovery that our senses do not in any way lead us to the inside of things, that, along with our receptivity, the representation and form of things outside us will change too. Every time such a new mode of seeing, natural or artificial, emerges and becomes known, it is a most important and valuable contribution to our current higher knowledge. Nature reveals herself with every natural spectacle. 31. This, however, gives rise to a third and new relative truth, the highest possible order of knowledge, namely the possibility of confirming an experience undergone, a way of seeing in order to compare with another experience undergone in a different organization, to determine what is factual in a thing, what is true only for some senses, but not for others. Most certainly such a truth, which is recognized not only through the general way of seeing, but is also recognized directly or indirectly by all organizations known to us, must be accorded a higher degree of certainty and reliability. This is the kind of truth that we call ontological. 32. This ontological truth is where general and special organizations, natural and artificial ones, converge. It is not perceived differently by any general or special organization, be it jaundice, the telescope, microscope, or a plane, concave, or convex mirror. But although it is certain and superior when compared to the two aforementioned relative truths, it too remains a relative one. Indeed, it is far from absolute. It is very possible that some or even most of its propositions will not be confirmed by the discovery of a new organization, but will seem illusory instead. It is true, and is a higher degree of truth, only as long as all things and experiences remain as they currently are. Although of a higher order, it is still human knowledge. Only death can and shall reveal how much of it can stand the test. What will happen when everything is faced with this new emerging organization, and which new properties of things we shall thus discover, and even that shall be far from conclusive. To discover many properties of beings that remain hidden, to experience new manifestations of these invisible forces, it will be necessary to die many times over. Every death is a leap into new light, into a new life. 33. These ontological truths are the foundation of our knowledge, the rectificatorium, lat rectification, of our senses and all appearances. They are the infallible criteria by which we determine if something is mere appearance. They are the guideline to which we must adhere in our state of uncertainty and illusion, the solid ground on which we stand, and the point from where we set out. Only these truths enable us even to look into the past and the near future. They are the first principles of our understanding. 34. If, however, nothing can be counted among these ontological truths except that which can be confirmed by all organizations known to us, or which is a direct, unquestionable result thereof, the following examples should be included, because with all organizations it is true and confirmed. 1. That something exists. Things only differ from one another in their mode of existence. 2. That I exist and am active. 3. That I do not always stay the same, that I am being changed. 4. That things outside me are real too. 5. That these things are not all the same, but diverse and of several types. 6. That these things outside me act upon me. 7. That these things remain the same, as I remain the same, when they induce the same kind of change in me. 8. That they and I are different if they induce a different change in me. 9. That these same things appear to me differently if I am changed or if my organs are. 10. That therefore, since these things appear to me differently depending on my changed organs, they are not in themselves as they appear to me. 11. That therefore, with changed organs, the same thing will appear to me differently. 12. That thereby they are something, certainly not merely an idea. 13. That there are things that cannot exist in and of themselves. They are real only in and through others, and they are not real without them. 14. That consequently there must be things that are real, although we have no sensation of them with any of our senses. 15. That extension, composition, matter, body, and shape cannot be counted among this last class of things. 16. That other, autonomous things must be concealed within this matter and composition. 17. That these are the basis of all activity, of the phenomenon known as matter, and of composition. 18. That these are the hidden forces which cause the appearances within us. 19. That, therefore, all matter, all extension, all composition is appearance. 20. That if the form, figure, and composition of something is changed, these inner forces also change. 21. That furthermore, we are able to prompt this inner change of forces if we reproduce the same causes under which the same change of form and figure has previously occurred. 22. That therefore similar causes prompt similar results, and similar results require similar causes. 23. That there is something permanent inside me which is constantly being modified. 24. That my body, being a composite, is not this permanent object. 25. That therefore myself and my body are not the same. 35. All these truths are and will always be of a fundamentally sensory nature. However, they come closer to the matter as it actually is because they are confirmed by several organizations or because such confirmed propositions are immediate or remote but correct conclusions. These ontological truths can be subject to correction or supplementation as our knowledge of new organizations enables us to learn whether or not they are confirmed by these organizations and if new rules and correlations are hereby discovered. In essence, they are suitable only for persons or beings that can experience and compare different organizations and then draw further conclusions from their comparisons. The dominion of truth is expanded with every new sense and with every experience of a new organization, just as the sphere of knowledge of a man with 5 senses must be incomparably larger than it would be if he only had one. In man alone, several such organizations can be found. A man whose only sense is touch would have an entirely different, almost non-existent body of knowledge. It is different again for someone with only touch and taste, touch and smell, touch and hearing, touch and sight. Each of these persons has his own method of conceptualizing objects outside himself, one that is different from ours. He is more or less in a position to compare and abstract. It is different again for men with only the senses of touch, smell, taste, touch, smell, hearing, touch, smell, sight, touch, taste, hearing, touch, taste, sight, touch, hearing, sight. And again, different for persons with only 4 senses, such as touch, smell, taste, hearing, touch, smell, taste, sight, touch, taste, sight, hearing, touch, smell, sight, hearing. However, it is most complete for those who have all 5 senses and, in addition, the means to enhance them artificially. Every man with this number of senses has his own organization compared with others, and it is well worth the effort to explore and determine the philosophy and sphere of concepts in each of these men, if it is at all humanly possible to resolve these concepts, to learn what and how much each sense contributes to each idea, and thus to dissolve the complexity of our ideas into its components. Only this would make it possible to reliably determine the degree of education, religion, ethics, legislation, and perfectibility that each of these organizations could achieve. The relative nature and development of our concepts would then appear in full certainty and strength. 36. However, no matter how grand and noble these ontological truths may be, no matter how much our ability to gather and understand them may be a testament to our nature's higher dignity, we are still incapable of knowing the inside of things, of knowing the absolute truth. 37. Absolute truth is that which is, in and of itself, intrinsic to something. It is the invisible force we perceive only through its effects, affecting differently organized beings in different ways. It is not for these senses, this form, this world, or for men. It is never subject to change. This force will always be force. It is always active, affecting different subjects in different ways, according to their ability to suffer it, according to their receptivity. Thereby it becomes the foundation and source of our relative truth. This is all we know about it. 38. Absolute truth is for God alone. God knows the forces and nature of things. Creatures base their judgments on the effects of these forces, how they appear to them, how they reveal themselves to them. From this, they draw conclusions about the cause and characteristics of this hidden force, its reality. That is why God does not perceive the acts of men as such. For this, he would need to have senses and bodies similar to ours. He perceives them to be the effects of these forces, observable only to him. In and of themselves and to God, there is no space, time, motion, body, extension, earth, and men, just as he seems to know neither heat nor cold, darkness, light or color, nor beauty or ugliness. Therefore the divine mind, will, freedom, goodness, and justice are mere anthropomorphisms. With these, we turn God into a man and convert the infinite into the finite.